Hey y'all, so welcome back again. Yes, you have two videos today. I am blessing y'all because I'm in a generous mood. I'm feeling good. I smell good. I look good. Like look at the material. Look at the material. All I have on is Fenty concealer, but I used it as a foundation just to hide some of my acne scarring that I've been dealing with. I have a little bit of Fenty brow on, no mascara. I have some Vaseline, the brown stick tube on, and that's literally all I have on. Oh, and I have some powder to like have set the concealer. And I fake retwisted my hair. Anyway, hey y'all, welcome back to Monique's channel, or to my channel, or to whatever the hell this is. Girl, I'm awkward. We're gonna get on a roll and we'll get it together. But today I want to talk about my first real video back. I had tons of things planned, but my first real video back. My first real video back. I wanted to talk about something that's really near and dear to my heart. And something that has broken me and healed me and broken me and healed me again, and that is sisterhood. Specifically, sisterhood in Black families, because I'm Black. I can't speak on sisterhood in other cultures, other dynamics. I can only speak to my experience. So I'm gonna talk about it about my journey through what sisterhood looks like. And I'm gonna do a part 2 of this video of sisterhood and friendships. But I want to talk about sisterhood exclusively to, siblings, because I am currently estranged with my sister, and I don't foresee that I'll ever speak to that woman again. But I still miss her, and I want to talk about what it feels like to be grieving the loss of a relationship that you value so much, and what that looks like for me. So I'm gonna take you all the way back. So 90s baby. I'm a 93 baby, 90s girl. And my mom was born in the 60s. Both my mom and my dad were born in the 60s. And my mom had my sister first. My sister is 14 and a half, almost 15 years older than I am. And for the majority of my life, at least the greater half of my life, I revered my sister like an aunt because she was so much older than I was. There's a disagreement about who's at fault here, but my sister was kicked out at 17. So I lived my life from 13 to 18, with an exception of the few times that my sister came home for a few months as an only child. My sister had lived outside of the home from 3 to 18. And so we don't have the same father. And my dad was very active. Unfortunately, hers was not. That's not my issue, but that's another conversation for a later part of this video. But my mom had remarried after I was born in late 90s. I was born again, 93. And most of my childhood, I just felt like I compared my sister and my mom's relationship to that of, I want to say Annie, and I can't remember the mom's name in Imitation of Life, the Black mom. And you guys know how she runs up at the end when her mom dies. I've always said that's what my sister and my mom's dynamic reminds me of. So that's just, I'm painting that picture so that you understand the breadth of what I'm about to explain. So my sister and my mom have had a interesting relationship, and I can understand it from both perspectives. My mom being at one point a teen mom with my sister, and my sister being working in mental health. And I understood, where the breakdown, the disconnect was. And I've begged for years for us to have like family counseling, but everybody bullheaded. And I'm the only Taurus amongst the three of us, but bullheaded. Speaking of signs, my mom's a Cancer, my sister's a Virgo, and I'm a Taurus. So it's some interesting dynamics going on here, right? So long story short, being that my sister is in mental health, I've struggled with my own mental health. My mom has always been very, she is emotional as a Cancer, but she doesn't allow herself to be emotional. She does not allow herself to be vulnerable in front of most people. I can count on my hands the number of times I've seen my mom cry. And in our dynamic, my mom and I have had our issues. There's been times that I feel like she royally mishandled my mental health. especially largely because I'm a 29-year-old woman and I've just got diagnosed with autism. This is something I should have been tested for years ago, and I showed tons of signs for it. Even the things that my family jokes about. I'm like, y'all didn't know that was autism? That's autism. But I said that all to say, my sister and I have always had a weird dynamic. And where it began to crumble and we got to this point that we're at now is because my sister will never be proud of me. And I will never make her proud, and I'll never be enough for her. For me, and I'm speaking my truth, and this is not me running to social media to tattletale, because I already know how my family and some distant friends and some folks don't look at this video, and I don't give a fuck. But I just know how this will be received. And the purpose of this video is really just to talk about how common it is for broken bonds in families to be, because when I talk to people about this, they're like, this is normal. And I know that there's so many conversations about, enforcing boundaries, and I'm proud of myself. My therapist is proud of me, and so many people are proud of me. And I'm heartbroken because I miss my sister, but I'm proud of myself for sticking up for myself finally to one of my first bullies. But one of the reasons that we got to where we are is 2020 and 2021, I had a depressive, manic episode, a depressive episode, nervous breakdown. I don't know what you can call it, but both times in 2020 and 2021, I found myself voluntarily committed to a 72-hour hold. And I found myself in this situation because I had gotten so overwhelmed, and it's painstakingly true that it was my fault. Like, not even that it's important, not that it's important to place blame, but it was me being unwilling to ask for help, letting things get so bad, letting myself get so stressed out. And again, at the time in 2020 and 2021, I didn't know I had complex PTSD, and I didn't know I had autism. I knew I had anxiety. I knew I went through depressive spells. And I knew obviously many moons ago, I had attempted suicide multiple times, hadn't done so since I was 18. So I knew I had struggled with some things, but I had never had a definitive diagnosis. And so when I was released from the facility in 2020, they identified it as being bipolar. However, I think some of the things that I had said in the sessions led them to believe that, because I did speak highly about characteristics that I felt like I showed, or symptoms that I showed that were mirroring my aunt, who has passed away years ago, back in 2007, symptoms that she had. And she actually was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And so, being that I wasn't really forthcoming, I was very tight-lipped about why I was there. And I really was there for that 72-hour hold and just to get back home. And I wasn't really doing the work, especially that time in 2020, they diagnosed me with bipolar disorder. Put me on risperidone and told me go follow with the psychiatrist and get on a treatment plan. I did not do so. Moved home, was in a terrible emotionally relationship, or emotionally abusive relationship. And I needed to get the hell home. So I moved my ass back to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was living in Houston at the time when that first 2020 nervous breakdown occurred. And I came home. And my sister, being in mental health, she kind of supported me through that. And I have to give her credit for that. I'm grateful for that, because she did hold my hand through that in ways that other people around me did not do. And then, unfortunately, I found myself in the same predicament at a larger scale in Milwaukee in 2021. And at that point, it was so explosive that when I was sitting in that time in the behavioral hospital, and I looked at myself in the mirror and I did not recognize myself, I said, I'm never coming back here again. And that was the bottom that I needed to get to change my life, which I'll talk more about in other videos. So that was July through August into September, late July into early September, mid-September of 2021, where that last nervous breakdown occurred. The day before Thanksgiving 2021, my sister and I got into an argument because she called my mom venting about something but somehow my name was in the conversation. And quite frankly, I shouldn't have heard it. My mom had a volume of high as hell, heard my name brought up. I heard part of it, and I snatched the phone from mom, and I'm like, why the fuck are you bringing my name up when you are venting about what you needed from our mother? How do I have anything to do with this? Like, I shouldn't be irrelevant at all. I should be irrelevant to this conversation. So I take full ownership for butting into a conversation. And then from there, I ceased conversation. I sent her a very direct message, like, you're gonna stop bringing me up and you're gonna take accountability for the shit that you do while I work on myself. And conceivably cut ties. I knew that I was working on myself, and I cut ties with a lot of people around that time because, again, like I mentioned, 2021 was the worst. 2022 was rebuilt. 2023, we're in a great place. So cut ties and hadn't spoken to her. And the first time that I had a real conversation with her was at the beginning of this year. As I mentioned, I mentioned in my last video, I believe, I moved from Wisconsin to North Carolina, somewhere I've always wanted to live. The Carolinas have always been somewhere that I wanted to call home. I'm finally here. I'm happy, thriving. I'm on a treatment plan. I'm in I'm in the best space of my life, mentally, emotionally, physically, everything. And my mom finds herself in the hospital twice for a myriad of issues that I had been on her case about. And she even I'll include a screenshot where she's like, I had to thank you because you've been on my ass about this and I kept ignoring you, being stubborn. And as soon as you leave, I find myself in the hospital, hospitalized and now on new medication. And my mom's, in her 60s, she's a boomer. They're hard-headed. They want to do things their way. She had been suggested to be on other medication and, was very resistant. And my mom is a woman of faith. She's like, God got me. And I'm just like, yeah, but he also got them doctors with their degrees and they're trying to help you get it together. So that was to say, my sister reached out to me because of the condition of my mother's home. Now, I moved kind of in a haste. I was trying to move later in May of this year, but I didn't want to wait any longer. And so I got the opportunity, had a window to do so during winter break so that I can move my daughter, in the middle of a school year and not be like in the middle of a school year. It's like truly over winter break. And that was just the perfect opportunity. So I did. And in doing so, my mom's health was left in a little bit of a disarray. But I had already spoken with my mom, made communication with my mom that I would be back by February. I'm actually going back home in about 2 weeks. And I would be back home to tidy up whatever mess that I have, finish getting all the things that I left there because I couldn't take everything at the time because I left so hastily. And I guess because of the condition of my mother's home, my sister felt like it was time to berate me. And when I told her, well, it's funny. I can count on my hand the number of times you've been to our mother's home since you and I have last spoken November of 2021. And here it is, January 2023. And you want to berate me about the condition of our mother's home when you don't come by and check on her? Are you serious? And there was a myriad of choice words spewing back and forth. But what really sealed the deal and what put the nail in the coffin was her berating me about being undiagnosed or unmedicated and refusing medication because I'm schizophrenic and bipolar. And it's heartbreaking because it's like, I've always put my sister on a big pedestal. Like, she was the prettiest girl in school. I never felt pretty as a child. Like, her and I had the relationship like Celie and Nettie. In fact, in my book that I released last year, my title that I talk about my sister and I's relationship is called Nettie's Shadow, because she used to joke and call me Celie. That woman was my first fucking bully. And it took me until like being 28 years old to realize she never really liked me. She liked the idea of having a sibling. She tells these stories of how she babied me and I was, her first everything and I was always with her. But I think she liked the idea of wanting a sibling. She was 14 and a half. But, she was ready to get out. And, because of her estranged relationship with our mother, she wanted to, she was, 1-4 out the door. You 14 and a half, you thinking, I got 3.5 years left. And I think me coming around kept her connected to my mom. I feel like if I wasn't born, she probably wouldn't maintain a relationship with my mom. I think my mom having me and her having a little sister maintained that bond. I kept that glue. And I might be wrong. I may be way off kilter here, but I like to think that just the way that their dynamic is, there's a possibility of that. But that in and of itself isn't the, the ultimate or the entirety of where this is encompassed. How I've held them together or not, or what role I've played isn't the, end all be all. But during that interaction with her, immediately following my mother being hospitalized at the top of the year, really revealed a lot about her character. And that is where I had to sit and have a come to Jesus moment and say, as much as I want to blindly think that she would never do this and this is like something else is going on, like the fact that one of the things, and she can't deny that this is happening because I have the audio messages and I downloaded them, and I may even add some snippets of words that she actually said. I'll distort the voice, but I'm probably gonna add them because y'all will not believe the shit this woman was saying to me. Like, she went on to call me trifling and messy and talk about my mothering skills as if my daughter isn't thriving and is the amazing kid that those of you who know me know that she is. Holding me to a standard, telling me that I'm fucking up everybody's life and my mom is stressed out because of me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, my mom and I have an amazing, I think you're projecting. In fact, you are. Not I think. I've confirmed this with my mother. I'm like, Mama, did you see? I was being petty. I sent my mom like all the screenshots, all the audio messages. Like, Mama, do you see this mess? And with everything that my mom was going through at the time, I do realize it was wrong to do so. My aunt had to check me about that. She was like, I understand why you want to involve your mom in this, but she's going through enough stress with being hospitalized, and we don't need to put any additional stress on her physically. And emotionally, with her being a cancer and seeing that you guys are at odds, that's stressing her and adding additional stress. So I stopped telling her. But for the brief moments that I did have a little tea moment with my mama, she was like, I don't know what the hell wrong with your sister, because I told her ass not to come at you like that. And she does that shit again. That woman puts her fucking foot in her mouth so many times. That's why she at one point got kicked out of her apartment. That's why she's gotten tickets and shit. She talks too fucking much. And it's crazy because her undergrad degree is in communications. So she's excellent with her words. She is a mastermind with her words, but a lot of times she says way too fucking much that fucks up the shit that was at hand. Because but I'm a little emotionally charged. Let's calm down and go back to what was going on. She did a lot of there was a lot of anti-Black rhetoric that was spewed at me. And I had to realize that my sisters had a very different upbringing than I did. While we were raised by the same mother in the same home, we had very different lifestyles. And I'll give you a perfect example, our schooling. Now, we were both born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. If you know anything about Milwaukee, Wisconsin, is one of the most segregated cities in the U.S. It's like always rallying for the top 5, if not the top 10 most segregated cities in the country. And in that, there's a clear divide of what's public inner city and what's suburb, private, what is that, right? And my sister being born in the late 70s, schooling, doing undergrad and most of her education through the 80s and 90s, my mom thought it was best to put her in a suburban school. So my sister only went to a suburban school where she was the minority, where she was surrounded by a myriad of white people, where the Black community was minuscule, if not non-existent. And she went from elementary to high school. She then went on to predominantly a PWI and, surrounded herself by whiteness. I hate to say it. I don't want to, label her, especially it being Black History Month. I don't want to put her and confine her to a box, but she reminds me a lot of a traditional Oreo that likes the idea of her Blackness and what that means to her being in relation to her people, but she's very elitist and, I'm better than that. And it's one thing to have self-confidence, because as I'm turning and I'm growing into my 30s, I'm even noticing the distinguishment of what I feel about myself and what self-confidence I have now as opposed to what I thought self-confidence was a decade or 15 years ago. So I understand the difference, but she has an air of arrogance that is just disgusting about her. And I think that was fueled by her being surrounded by whiteness. And again, I'm talking about this being that I'm discussing blackness and black sisterhood. You know, when you have two children and you give them two separate lifestyles and upbringings, there are going to be very different outcomes. Whereas I went to private schools, but private inner city schools, charter schools. And then at some point, my mom stopped paying for charter schools and put my black ass in public schools because I kept getting in trouble. And she was like, I'm not spending $5 a month to put your ass in private school. You acting a damn fool. I was kind of a class clown. We'll get to that in another video. But, you know, we had two very different upbringings, again, despite being raised by the same woman. And so in that spat that we were having, my sister and I were having at the top of the year, when she was saying certain things, I'm like, this is coming from a very anti-black standpoint. And I can't believe this because she's one of the people that introduced me to like my neo soul and has always been the person in my life outside of my mom who encouraged me to love. Like, she had locks before me. I didn't get locks because of her. There's another cousin in our family that I've always admired that has sister locks, and I wish I had got sister locks, but that's another conversation for another day. But I've always admired my sister. I've always looked up to her. I've always wanted to be in some ways like her. And it took me until this year having more conversations and more intentional conversations with people around me about how I'm mishandled and how I'm mistreated to realize that I was not cared for. I was loved in a conceptual standpoint, but when I think about love, I think about love as an action word, and it is something that you do, something that you prove constantly. And I don't feel that for my sister. At least I haven't in the last 5 or 6 years. I feel like I've been tolerated and needed, but not desired. And that is ultimately why I can't maintain a relationship with my sister. And it sucks because I'm hoping that it's not impacting my relationship with my niece. I've talked to her. I've had maintained communication with her, hoping that, you know, with her being 16 and almost grown, you know, that doesn't impact us. But if it does, because she is her mother's child, I just have to accept that. But yeah, you know, spewing anti-black rhetoric at me. She only lives in like suburbs. She lives in, you know, I'm not gonna go into where she lives because I'm not blowing up her spot. She went on to talk about like the reason when I first responded to her commenting about the condition of my mom's house, she went on to say something along the lines of the reason, and I was like, are you seriously? First and foremost, this is the first time you talked to me and had an actual conversation with me since we last spoke. And the way you do it is not, hey, you need to bring your ass home because mom's in trouble. It's you coming at me crazy about some shit that you don't even know what's going on. And she was like, yeah, I'm doing this because you said fuck me. And I'm going to include the video that she's referring to. And I guess I need to make this very clear because there's people who assume that my dreams and the dreams that I'm following right now are a bite of their shit when I've had these dreams forever. But I didn't have the support system when my kid was small to follow them. And now that my kid is a 7th grader, I can chase my dreams now. So I got papers from decades ago, over a decade ago, about what I'm doing today. But because somebody else is doing something similar, it assumes that I am following them. You can kiss my whole ass and you know who you are. Fuck you. Shortly after our argument in November of 2021, that spewed her to block me on Facebook, which I don't care about. It's social media. I see you in real life. I don't have to be social with you online. In fact, most of my family I'm not friends with online because I do shit online that I don't want them to see, and they be doing too much online that I don't want to see, and vice versa. And it's not even a shade. That's not even a shade. That's just true tea. So when she blocked me, I think that was her way of having some power, and I'm like, girl, I went on with my life. Like, I am dealing with my own major shit. You blocking me on internet, like, I was impacted. I felt some type of way, but I wasn't losing sleep over that shit. There were more pressing and more things of more higher priority for me to take care of in fall of 2021 and 2022 and throughout the entire year of 2022. So I don't know why she felt the need to say that. Like, you said fuck me. I'm like, girl, you are in your mid 40s. Are you seriously holding on to the fact that I said fuck you on Facebook in 2021? Seriously? Grow up. She went on to say some other things about my daughter, and I think what happened, what the dynamic looks like between my sister and I is that I think how she views my daughter, she views her as she has pity because she thinks that my daughter goes through some of the same traumas that she went through. One of the things that her and I can agree on, and even my mom can agree on, is that my mom, despite being a Cancer and being very emotional, she's very reserved with her emotions. Like I said at the top of the video, I can count on my hand the number of times that I see my mom cry. And being that my mom was very reserved with her emotions, we both her and I, both my sister and I, can agree that we did not have an emotional relationship with our mother. She was a provider. She guided us. You know, definitely for the most part felt safe, aside from our ass whoopings that we got, and I got way more of them. But having that emotional connection that you have, mother-daughter, that daughters yearn, neither of us had. And my mom didn't recognize that until both my sister and I became mothers to daughters, and she saw that how we doted on our children, on our daughters. And she expressed an enormous and immense amount of regret for that. And I had to forgive my mom. My mom and I went through a moment where we weren't speaking in 2015 because I was going through my own respective therapy for my mommy issues. In fact, that was the first time that I came on See Monique. And there's old videos that I'm actually going to react to because they were my truth. But at the time, I was in a very, very much a victim mindset. And so the content isn't reflective of how I want the story to be told. The information was accurate, but the way I presented it was not. So I'm going to re-release that later this month, probably during the month of May, during Mother's Day month. She's going to be visiting, so I may even do like a reaction video where she watches it with me because she saw that video back in 2015 and was heartbroken. It was actually 2 videos, and that was where we began to mend our relationship. And ultimately, I don't feel like my sister ever forgave my mom. Like I mentioned, we don't have an emotional relationship with her. And so, you know, thinking about how we've had to reparent ourselves, I do understand some of the frustrations that my sisters had. I'm not saying that they are, you know, without merit. They have some value, but how I'm being made to pay for my mother's choices is one thing. But the point that I was getting at is that because my mom was emotionally disconnected from us and had her own issues that impacted how she mothered us, and my sister feels like she has had this terrible childhood, which I can't speak for that, but from the pictures and from other stories and other recounts, I'm not sure how her life was so terrible, but I can't speak for that. There may be storms that she went through that nobody knew. So that ain't my place to speak. But when the way that she handles my daughter is she compares their lives a lot. You know, being born to 2 women in high school. You know, I was a sophomore in high school. My mom was a senior when we had our first child. Had a daughter with a man that was estranged who went on to have multiple other kids and did not have any relationship with that child. I think my sister is the firstborn to her dad, and my daughter is the firstborn to her dad, and he's estranged. She doesn't have a relationship with him despite having a relationship with all his other children. And so while there are similarities between their upbringings, their situations are completely different. You know, my daughter and I have an amazing relationship, and despite all of the issues that I've dealt with regard to my mental health, I know that we're solid. There may be spaces that we can strengthen, and that's going to always be the case with any relationship that you have, but we are good. And so for her to spew out all of this rhetoric around my daughter, me fucking up her life and me making poor choices, and I'll admit, I'm the first to guilt myself. I actually put myself through the ringer when it comes to guilt. You know, the first time I publicly attempted suicide was in high school as a junior. I was dealing with postpartum depression, and to get through that, I guilt tripped myself through that process, that grief of what happened, because I'm like, how dare I put my daughter through that and potentially make her an orphan because her father is inactive in her life and I'm the only present parent, and I almost made her an orphan. So I deal with guilt on my own. So for somebody to keep telling me like, you're trifling, you ain't shit. Then she called me loose at one point, talking about I'm just moved down here to be up under some man, as if I'm not in the happiest relationship of my life. And what's crazy about all this situation is that my sister sometimes has these expectations on me that she couldn't uphold herself. Like, I'm 29. When you were 29, you were literally just graduating from college. Granted, I haven't graduated because I was, unlike her, I had a child my entire, all of my 20s. So some sacrifices had to be made. You had no responsibilities and kept pulling yourself out of school. And not that it's a matter of comparing, because that's petty, but let's just be honest here. Like, the standard that she holds me to is so unrealistic. Like I said, she was just getting her degree. She had just got out of a bad relationship with her child's father. My niece was about a year old when she was my age. She had just moved back home to my mom's house when she was my age. So all the things she's telling me that I should have together, she doesn't. And it's just like, why do you have so many expectations on me? One, I don't have to abide by those. I don't have to fulfill your dreams for me. So I'm thank you, but I'm returning that back to you. But at the same time, it's like, but why? But why do you feel like I need this many expectations on me? Especially, let's just play devil's advocate. If you thought, in fact, I did have bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, which you keep saying that I did, why would you fix your lips, fix yourself to spew rhetoric that could trigger somebody like myself? If I had bipolar disorder, if I was schizophrenic, that could trigger me to a space of wanting to self-harm. That's where it was like that was the final straw for my sister, because I don't have those things. And I'm much stronger, and I have a lot stronger coping skills now, and I'm equipped with better tools now because I've been in therapy actively for the last year, working with not only my psychiatrist, but my therapist and my neurologist and my internist. Like, I've been doing the work. 2021, I paid so much money in fucking medical bills. I am sick of paying medical bills. I'm sick of seeing medical coding. Like, the woman, we ain't spoke. So how are you going to fix the lips to tell me what I've been doing with regard to my health? Girl, get it together. You don't know what you're talking about. And I was at a place where, like, getting all of this, I was so proud of myself, because I even had to call my therapist back in Wisconsin because I haven't established care with the new therapist here yet, because I've only been here less than a month. Like, today is the 1st. I moved here December 29th or December 30th. So just barely over a month I've been in a new city. And in that time, I've gone through so many emotions. I had panic attacks. I had, anxiety attacks, which are different. And, I had to remind myself that I am so much stronger, and I don't have to fit into anybody's box, and I don't have to make anybody proud. I spent so much of my 20s, my early 20s and my late teens, after being a teen mom, you spend so much of your time trying to prove people wrong, prove that you aren't a fuck up, prove that, having a child at a young age isn't going to change your life or stop you from reaching your goals and your dreams. And quite frankly, I had to learn that I don't even have to do that. I don't have to prove anybody wrong. My life, my journey is mine, and I don't have to ascribe or subscribe to any timeline that anyone else has set for me. And so for me, what I want people to come away from this story time with is that be very weary and leery, quite frankly, of how you approach people who you think are battling mental health issues, because you never know how your aggressiveness can trigger them. Had this conversation that her and I had occurred just 2 years prior, I probably would have spiraled into self-harm. Like, I'm fairly confident that I would have spiraled into self-harm and very detrimental self-harm. Like, at one point I was cutting as a teen. At one point I was popping pills, drinking excessively. I was bulimic at one point. I was anorexic at one point. Like, I went through a lot. And again, all these videos are coming. My memoir will be posted soon. All of this stuff will be posted where it's accessible for you to understand my full story, but it was just sad. And it's really telling to see like the kind of the generalization of the world right now. There's so many conversations being had around healing and intentional family and community and what that looks like, and not being locked in or requiring that you maintain relationships with people, dead relationships with people who no longer want the best for you. I don't want to use the language that no longer serves you, because I don't want it to sound like people are here to serve you. I don't think that, your interactions and your relationships are built on service. They are built on harmony, and they're built on community. And I've something one of my closest friends, or one of my friends, has said to me. She said, I only want to be around people who make me feel as safe with them as I do alone. And I think that is something that really transformed how I view the relationships that I maintain. I have enough good memories with a lot of people. I take tons of pictures, and as I stated when I started this video, I miss my sister immensely, but I am done. I've washed my hands with that woman, because to attack me verbally about something that you are completely ignorant to is beyond me. So, I've always been a support system to that woman, even as a child. And this is talked about in my book heavily and more in detail. But there was times when my sister was in a domestic relationship, and me as a child was helping her mediate that issue because she was too afraid to contact our family. And it's like, I've been nothing but supportive of you. And for you to not only alienate me and to further my abandonment issues with you, because your issues with mom shouldn't have placated into your issues with me, but every single time you allow them. So, sister dearest, I want you to know that I love you, but you are no longer in access to me. You no longer have accessibility to me. When my partner and I get married, you will not be invited. When I have additional children, you will not be invited to or made aware. I have removed you from my will. I had you in there as being the person who's responsible for my daughter in the event that something happens to me. You have been removed. I talked to my lawyer in the last several weeks. I'm done. And I can confidently say that and not feel any remorse. Being an empath, being in a Enneagram number 2, one of our core beliefs is to be loved. And when I feel like I'm not loved, sometimes I can become manipulative to try to get love from people. And I know that about myself. I know myself very, very well. And so with that, I know what I won't tolerate. And what I will not tolerate anymore is people who do not make me feel safe. And the reason why I don't feel safe with you is because you'll take the very thing that is supposed to be the most vulnerable part of myself and try to take it and throw it back at me like a dagger. I spent so many years admiring you. I've spent so many years idolizing you, so many years wanting to be just like you, only to know that I didn't have that same reciprocity and admiration back. And not that I require that, but again, I need to feel safe, and I don't. So I love you, but I have nothing more to give, and I don't care to make any additional memories with you. So I hope that this message and this video inspires someone to stand up for themselves. I hope that this video inspires one to have those difficult conversations, and I hope that this encourages you to assess your own relationships and think about whatever inequities you're dealing with for the sake of maintaining that community and that relationship with someone. You should not be in any type of relationship of any kind, whether that be platonic, professional, / business, relationship, domestic, even with your children and your parents. Advocate for yourself. Stand up for the things that you need and the space you need created for you and carved out for you, and go where you are loved. Go where you are not, don't go where you're tolerated. Go where you are accepted, you are encouraged, you are inspired. Go there. With that, be Black, because it's Black History Month. And yeah, y'all got it. So, love y'all. I'll be back next week. And we'll be talking about sisterhood and friendships. Because, girl, 2021, like I told you, I tried to take me out. And I had one of the most devastating friend breakups that I've ever experienced. And I just want to talk about it candidly. So, y'all have a great February. Do something and support something, or do something that's intentional to support Black people, and do something additionally that's intentional to support Black businesses. We are our own biggest critic sometimes, but we can be our greatest cheerleader. And when we have our back and cycle those Black dollars, we literally can change the world. So I'm gonna be sharing some of my Black brands. This is a Black-owned shirt. It says protect weird Black girls, protect trans Black girls, protect hood Black girls, protect nerdy Black girls, to protect fat Black girls, protect dark-skinned Black girls, and lastly, protect all Black girls, because we need to be protected. And sometimes that means from the very people who claim to love you. Protect yourself from them. So, bye.